Hello and welcome. Today I have for you something super fun and it is the makeup and books tag. So if you want to see me do this look and talk about some books, please continue watching. So the first step I actually like to do in the morning, and that is to cleanse my face with some micellar water. At the moment I'm using the Eyeshadow Rosehip micellar water, and then I like to spray either with this Mario Badescu or this one. At the moment I am using the aloe, cucumber and green tea. I just find that this really helps rejuvenate my skin after sleeping. I think it makes it look a lot more bright and awake, and it just helps like replenish my skin from overnight. Next step, I'm going to have to get rid of my fringe momentarily, which you'll see just basically the plainest, palest face. So the first question is primer, and it is pick a book that left a lasting impression on you. For this one, I actually chose Anthony Burgess, A Clockwork Orange. I think it was where and when I read this in my life. So I was 17 and I was actually in the UK. I was in England when I was reading this book, and I remember reading it on the tube all the time. And it's such an interesting world to get into. If you haven't read A Clockwork Orange, it is written quite differently, almost kind of like Trainspotting, in which it's written how they would talk, and it's actually kind of a slightly different language than English. Like, they use some very strange phrases. I'll see if I can find a good sentence for you. So, but I could not shut my glazies, and even if I tried to move my glass balls about, I still could not get light out of the line of fire of this picture. So I had to go on videoing what was being done and hearing the most ghastly creakings coming from this litho. That's the whole book. So everything is called something slightly different, but once you start reading it, it's very easy to understand what exactly is meant by which words. So glass balls is eyes. It's like everything kind of makes sense. But yeah, I think this left a lasting impression because of where I was when I read it. Also, it made me feel kind of ill. I don't know whether it was because I was reading while I was on the tube or if it's just the imagery that this brings up, but yeah, that one definitely left a lasting impression on me. Now for primer, I don't actually generally use primer unless I'm feeling like my skin is a bit dry. I'm pretty happy with how my skin is at the moment, so I'm not going to use primer. You should though, like, you should use primer. So I'm just going to move on to the next question, which is for foundation, and it is favorite first book in a series. I have two for this. I know I tried to keep things down to one. I think this is the only one that I actually couldn't decide, and I tried to keep it different. Like, I was gonna choose Harry Potter because I think it's a really great opening book, but it's not actually my favorite in the series. So I was stuck between Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I recently read this and oh my god, like I don't know why it took me so long to get to it for the first point. Second point, I think the world Leigh Bardugo has created is amazing. This is a part of the Grishaverse, which I know the Shadow and Bone trilogy is in that verse as well, but I went straight to Six of Crows. I don't think it's a hindrance. You still understand everything. This is the first sort of like steampunk book that I've read as well, and I really loved it. I love the characters. I love when there's a big band of characters, so you can sort of have your favorites and see how the dynamic changes, and I think the character growth is really interesting in this series. Yeah, Six of Crows is great, essentially. My second choice is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I mean, if you've not read this series, I don't know where you've been. I don't know why you haven't. It's an amazing series. I think I steered clear of this series for years because I wasn't that fond of the cover. I mean, I love them now. I love Selena on the cover, but that was why I actually didn't get into it for so long. And then I read the first one and I loved it so much. I went out and I got the second one straight away because I just wanted to keep reading about this world. I think Sarah J Maas, she knows how to create atmosphere and she knows how to create really complex characters. This is incredible. It really grips you in. It barely scratches the surface of what you're gonna get into in the next like 7 books. So I highly recommend Throne of Glass. It's a really fun premise. This is the only one that sort of has a bit more dalliance in it, I guess. Like, it's not as world ending in this first one because Sarah J Maas is setting it all up for the later books. So you actually really get to know your characters and you get to see them have some fun, and it's just a really good book. Please read Throne of Glass if you haven't. So for foundation, I am actually going to use Bare Minerals Complexion Rescue, which is actually a tinted hydrating cream. So essentially like a tinted moisturizer. I don't really wear full coverage foundation very often, only if I'm going out for like a really big event and I want to make sure my face is nice, or yeah, just like special occasions. Because this is like a moisturizer, it's better to use my hands rather than a brush or beauty blender. So the Complexion Rescue is also really great because it has got a bit of SPF in it, so if it's for everyday wear, then you're still getting that coverage on your face, which down here in Australia we have to be a little bit more careful about because our ozone layer is actually a bit thinner than everywhere else in the world, if you didn't know. Next is concealer. So pick a character you wish didn't exist. I struggled for a little while with this one because you kind of want to say a villain because you're meant to dislike them and everything like that, but I find that if I chose a villain, then would my character have the same character growth? Would the story be the same? I was trying to choose someone that I didn't think was necessary to the plot and didn't assist my character, like the lead characters, in any way. So I ended up choosing Maddie from Brightside, which I don't have a hard copy of. Unfortunately, Brightside is really hard to find a hard copy of. I don't know why. It's really frustrating. I have like a physical copy of the audiobook, like I have the CD, because it's so strange. Anyway, I chose Maddie, which is the lead character Kate's aunt, and I think she's the most unnecessary character I may have ever read. Basically, I'm gonna start doing my concealer while I do this. So I have 2 concealers. I have one for under my eyes and one for just like any general spots. They are both Too Faced Born This Way. The one for under my eyes is Fairest and the one for general area is Very Fair. If you didn't know, I'm very fair. I think Fairest is actually either the palest or the next to palest shade, and Fairest is only the one up. That's the best that I can do, essentially. So on a day-to-day, if I'm really liking my skin, I will actually only do the under eyes. I think I might do a little bit of extra coverage today, just to sort of show you a little bit more of what I do. But back to Maddie. So Maddie, as I said, is the lead character Kate's aunt, who she goes to stay with right before she goes to college. That's probably the most necessary point she is in the plot line. So I'm just gonna take a beauty blender and blend that. She's not likable. She's rude to Kate the whole time. Then she does also, you find out, she has bulimia. And I don't love her representation of bulimia. I've read some amazing books that cover eating disorders really well. As someone who has struggled with that, I like to see a more positive representation, not in terms of like it's a good thing, but in terms of how do I even explain this? Just in a true light. I found the way that the bulimia was depicted with Maddie, I didn't believe was truthful. I didn't believe in it. My other issue with Maddie is she has zero character growth, like zero. She does not change. Like you think she has, and then she goes back and continues her manipulative ways. So she's really, really unlikable and really pointless. So that's why I chose her. However, Brightside is a really great book. I think it's really a really quite important book as well in terms of how you affect other people and how important it is to see everything in the most positive light as you can, but at the same time to not let that hinder you. Like, you are allowed to have a bad day. It's okay to have a bad day. And I think Brightside's really good at explaining that. So far, this has actually been in the same order that I do my face. So that's great. This is where it kind of detours. So next I would do my eyebrows. So I'm going to skip to that question. Eyebrows is pick a book you think everyone should read. I chose Under Rose Tainted Skies. I think this is a really positive representation of mental illness. Under Rose Tainted Skies follows Nora, who is, I believe, agoraphobic. Essentially, her mental illness is so crippling that she has not left the house in 4 years. Nora also does struggle with OCD and a few other issues. Agoraphobia and OCD seem to be the two largest ones. Then her life sort of takes a turn when a really cute boy, interesting guy, moves in next door who takes interest in Nora and is curious about her and about her ways. I love the exploration of mental illness in this. I think if you want to read more into mental health books, this is a great place to start. It's nothing too damaging. I wouldn't say you really needed any kind of forewarning in terms of like depression or suicide or anything like that. It doesn't really come into play. So yeah, I think everyone should read this just for a better understanding of mental health and how it really can affect you, but also I think people need to understand their own bravery and that sometimes the smallest steps are the most helpful ones. And I think this is also really great for people with mental health issues because it depicts that really amazingly. So at the moment I am using just a NYX micro brow pencil. This just has a spoolie on one side and the pencil on the other. I probably pay less attention to my eyebrows than any other person. I still do them, so that's probably saying a bit much, but I don't pay as much attention to them as I know quite a lot of other people do. I basically start off with a line from the front until it gets to the beginning of the arch, and then I follow that line through the arch and bring it down. Then I also outline the top of the eyebrow with a pretty bold line. Again, following like the natural arch that I have down into the tip again. And then I just shade it through in that heavier section towards the end, middle and end of the eyebrow. And then for the front, I actually just do a few really light upward brush strokes with the pencil. And that's it. So I'm just going to fast forward doing the other side because I do the exact same thing. Yeah. Next, I normally do my eyes. So I'm going to do that. For eyeshadow, pick a book with your favorite colors on the cover. So my favorite color is orange. If you didn't know, it is. It took me a while in my life to figure it out. I guess favorite colors do change, but for a significant portion of my life, orange has been my favorite. I think for at least the past like 10 years. It's been my favorite. So I naturally chose The Weight of Zero. I find this just a really pleasing cover. I love the pastels. The orange at the edges is my favorite type of orange. And I also wanted to talk about The Weight of Zero because this was a potential for a book I think everyone should read. The Weight of Zero is about a girl named Catherine who suffers with bipolar disorder. From her bipolar disorder, she has a severe case of depression, which she calls Zero. I really heavily related to this book in terms of how she describes her depression and how she describes Zero, and I think it's a really phenomenal way. It is a little bit triggering, so I do give you the trigger warning of suicide and depression. It's a lot more heavy duty than what Under Rose Tainted Skies is, so please be warned and be careful if you do read it, but I highly recommend it. I felt a lot of truth in this book when I read it. I felt like I was being represented in a way that I hadn't seen before. I don't have bipolar disorder personally, but I have felt the effects of depression throughout most of my life, I would say, like from quite a young age, when I look back to realize when it all sort of started to happen. Essentially, I just wanted to also talk about this book, and it is quite a satisfying, pretty cover. I'm gonna take inspiration from The Weight of Zero and do a slightly more burnt look, I think. So I'm gonna use the Urban Decay. So as you can probably tell, I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to makeup, but I enjoy it and it's fun, so why not? My outlook on life. Then I'm going to take Dirty Talk and I'm gonna just put that all over my eyelid. This is gonna be way more intense than I thought I was gonna do, but whatever, we're gonna go with it now. Next, I'm going to take He Devil and I'm going to put that through my crease. I'm just going to take On Fuego just to darken up the edges of the crease just a little bit. Eyeshadow is actually my favorite part because I think it's where you can have the most fun. Then I like to just blend out those edges just to make it a little less harsh with the rest of my skin. Then I'm just going to take a mix of Dirty Talk and He Devil, which I put on my lid and in the crease, just slightly under the eye. I really like this look. I think it helps bring it together for me, and I think it helps bring out my eye color. And I bring that right through and try and blend it out just there. This is way more of a look than I thought it was gonna be. Anyway, I'm taking Ounce and I'm just putting that on the inner corner. So the next question is about eyeliner. Now, I don't really wear eyeliner, but I do sometimes go in with a darker like eyeshadow to create the effect of eyeliner, just to really darken up closer to my eyelashes. So that's what I'm gonna do. And while I do that, I'm going to pick a dark and mysterious book. I had Gone Girl originally. I just want to start with that because that was probably one of the first thrillers that I read. I think everyone kind of read it at the same time when the film came out, and I did love it. And I think Gillian Flynn does really well with those sorts of books. And then I had One of Us is Lying because I was like, oh, like maybe I'll try and make it something a bit more teen, young adult, like accessible, I don't know, something that more people are going to be interested in, because One of Us is Lying is about, it's kind of like Breakfast Club meets a scary movie. But I went with In Her Skin because I thought I would choose something that I don't really hear talked about very much. In Her Skin, I didn't predict what was going to happen. I'm usually quite good at predicting stories and films and scenes and everything like that, but until it was happening, I didn't know it was happening, basically. This is a lot darker than I thought it was gonna be. I got this in a Shelf Love Reads box, and I was surprised. The The next part that I would normally do is mascara. So for mascara, pick a long book. This was not hard. Game of Thrones. Any book in the Game of Thrones series is like 700 or more pages long. This is the longest reading time you will ever have in your life. It is also a really great reading time. The world building is insane. The characters are really well done. They're so long. I have reread this first book once since the first time I read it. I mean, I've rewatched the show like a million times, so the first series and the first book are actually quite identical. But I haven't gone past the first book because A Clash of Kings is, I think, like 800 or 900 pages. So it's a lot to take on. It's not just your casual read. I do recommend them, it's just a lot to commit to. Now for mascara, I actually switched in between two different ones. So I have the Tarte Lights Camera Lashes and I have Urban Decay's Perversion. Perversion I like to wear when I've got more of a eyeshadow look like today. The Lights Camera Lashes is a little bit more subtle, so I usually wear that on a day-to-day basis if I'm not wearing that much eyeshadow. I'm okay with that. That is eyes done. So next I'm gonna go back to my face and I'm gonna do powder. So for powder, it is pick your favorite last book in a series. I did actually struggle a little bit with this. In choosing this, I realized how often I like the middle book of a series or something that is in the middle of a longer series. I generally don't love the last books of series. Most of the time it's because I guess you've built it up in such a way that for the author to end a series the exact way that you want it to, it's pretty hard. Like, we put a lot of pressure onto authors. But I went with the all-time classic, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I think this is almost what I would have liked to see from this series. I don't love the 19 years later part. I kind of see why it's necessary. I have the same issue that a lot of people have with the Albus Severus name. Why is that a thing? Anyway, discluding that, I find the wrap-up of Deathly Hallows is done really well. It's also still so intriguing and it's something that the series builds up to the whole way without you ever realizing it. So I think this has to be it, the pinnacle, and I had to get Harry Potter in there somehow, right? Right? I just want to address this area. That area is slowly getting redone and all of those frames are actually going to go onto the wall, not in these boxes. They're just there for now until I figure out exactly what I'm doing, but I wanted to bring my bookish love into my wardrobe because I didn't really have anything in here. Next up is bronzer. Now, bronzer and contour, I actually essentially do the same thing. I don't really use bronzer. I use a contour shade like bronzer because I don't really contour, if that makes sense. But I'm gonna answer both questions because the bronzer question was put in by one of my faves, Books with Chloe, and her question was pick the perfect summer read. So perfect summer read, I chose Alex Approximately. If you watched my booktubeathon, you will know I really fell in love with this book. There is nothing bad that happens. Like, it's honestly just a feel-good book about two cuties falling in love. So this is what I think of when I think of like a summer read. It's something you want to easily drop into when you go to the beach or when you're just like chilling in the park or something like that and you don't want to cry. Essentially, you just want to have a good time, you just want to feel good, the sun's out, you're happy, you want to keep it going with your book choice. Alex Approximately is your book. And then for contour, what book surprised you with how much depth it has in it? Unsurprisingly, Sarah J Maas makes another appearance in A Court of Thorns and Roses. A Court of Thorns and Roses, on face value when you first read it, it's great, you fall in love with the series, you want to keep going, you do, you find out all this stuff, and then you're like, what? Where did this come from, right? You think, and then you do the reread, which you have to do the reread. This is a series I could read a million times over. You do the reread, and you're like, holy crap. Sarah J Maas can really plan her storylines. This book has so much more in it than you're ever going to expect. It just, I'm like flabbergasted at how much Sarah J Maas has put into this first book. When you go through, like I said, it's great, but I think you're so focused on the storyline and the characters at the time that you just take everything in and you're like, okay, cool, this is interesting. All right, let's see where this is going. And then when you read it for a second time, there are all these little hints and little moments that come up again in like the second and third books. And the foreshadowing, it's just so good. This is the winner for a book that has so much more depth than I ever thought it would. Now I'm finally gonna actually do my face. I think this is called, I'll try and put it in a way that it doesn't shine everywhere, the Double Duty Beauty contour palette. This is also the palest two colors that they have in this contour series. And I take a big fluffy brush. Like I said, I do my contour like I do bronzer. And for highlight, the question, pick a book that brightens your day. So again, I was going to choose Harry Potter because it does really brighten my day. I feel better if I've read it. But I chose Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick because this woman is one of my favorite people. If I ever get to meet Anna Kendrick, I think I might squeal in her face. I am currently rereading this through the audiobook, which I highly, highly, highly recommend because it is narrated by Anna Kendrick. So if you don't love reading, that's okay. Just listen to the audiobook because it's basically like her telling you fun stories about her life. And it's like she's chatting to you like she's just your friend. And I just love it. I think it's great. But yeah, Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick. There's also a question for blush. Now, as a quite pale person, and also because I don't really put that much of a base down, my natural color comes through quite easily. I don't really use blush. The only time I do is when it's forced upon me on a set. And that's just because they want to give me more color, because they usually do a full face or something. They want to give me more color for on the camera. The question for blush though is pick a book that had a cringe-worthy romance. Now, again, I'm going to talk about what I was going to choose, which is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I don't even remember the two characters in that. I just know that I was uncomfortable like the whole time I read that book because it's how it's meant to be. I understand, so that's why I didn't choose it. I'm going to skip past it now. I'm going to talk about what I actually chose, which is Eleanor and Park. I feel like this is like going to be kind of targeted, but it was a little bit cringy for me at times. I didn't love the romance. I thought it was sweet at points, but most of the time I was a bit like, oh, okay. That's all I can really say about Eleanor and Park. I don't want to go too in depth in it. I kind of just chose it because I had to choose a book, but it's still a good book. It just is a little bit cringy. Sorry. The last question is lipstick, and it is your favorite book kiss. Okay, so my favorite like bookish moment where people get together is actually in Akamath, A Court of Mist and Fury. However, that is a huge spoiler, so if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to choose something that everyone I'm sure knows about by now. It is To All the Boys I've Loved Before. And it is specifically when Lara Jean really accepts and understands that she's fallen for Peter Kay. She's fallen for Peter Kavinsky, like the rest of us at the moment. Thank you, Netflix, and thank you, Noah Centineo. But I think it's a really sweet moment. I think it's a really proud moment for Lara Jean to finally accept that it's okay to like someone and it's okay to feel that way about someone. Yeah, I chose that because it's so cute. For my lips, sometimes I do actually just like to use the Hurrah Earl Grey lip balm or the cinnamon lip balm, which is slightly tinted. Day to day, I would probably just wear that. If I'm doing a bit more of a look, I will actually wear a lipstick. Today I'm choosing, pretty sure this is Safe Word by Smashbox. Lastly, I do actually like to spray with my Badescu just to help keep everything fresh and not look too powdery. I mean, it looks pretty fine today, if I do say so myself, but this is just like a last step. It also helps like set it down. Also, it's like hella refreshing. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I think that's enough.